And now, special assignment.
Metalworking fluids are as common in auto plants as steel. But tonight, workers are worried that there's a silent killer in plants across the country. Target 7 investigator Shelley Smith uncovers a danger workers say they should have been warned about years ago. Shelley?
Well, Guy, General Motors has known for years about the dangers of cutting fluids. As far back as 1988, GM had proof that these chemicals were causing serious respiratory problems in its workers. Tonight, one worker in Flint is dead, dozens more are unable to work, and the cases of a new respiratory disease called hypersensitivity pneumonitis, or scarring of the lung, are on the rise.
Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. Take another deep breath. Good.
After working 31 years at the V8 engine plant in Flint, this is Alvin Davis's life. Alvin has lung cancer. He fights for every breath.
Things like fabric softeners or detergent that have built-in perfumes, can't tolerate it. My wife's down in the basement doing laundry. I gotta leave the house.
And he believes exposure to metalworking fluids will eventually kill him. More than 1 million American workers use metalworking fluids on the job every day. 100,000 of them are in the Detroit area. That mist of chemicals flows over the pieces of iron and steel, lubricating and cooling the metal along the way. In 1985, General Motors and the UAW commissioned the largest study ever done on metalworking fluids and their effect on the respiratory system. They paid Harvard University $1 million. Barbara Otterstetter was hired to collect the data.
We were called in, a team, an independent team, called in to conduct pulmonary function tests. Gives a rough idea of how well the worker is breathing, how tight. If they're complaining of tightness of chest, can they get the air back out? Can they get the air in?
And what did you find?
There was a significant decrease in the amount of air that was being exchanged in the lungs.
They studied workers at 4 different plants, but 6 weeks after entering the HydraMatic plant in Ypsilanti, Barbara ended up in the critical care unit of a hospital with respiratory failure.
It's almost a panic because the harder you breathe, the more air goes in, but the less air comes out.
Were you scared?
No, I was petrified. I thought I was dying.
When the researchers presented their findings, Barbara says GM didn't like the results. Dr. Ian Greaves, one of the authors, tells Target 7 they were pressured to delete parts of the study. Others tell us they were pressured to delay parts of the study and verbally attacked by General Motors. GM ultimately issued an apology and ordered more research. Greaves is now an expert witness in the case against GM.
It communicated to me that General Motors put corporate greed and arrogance over the worker safety and health.
And where is the union on this issue?
Every new scientific finding has to be confirmed. We think it's confirmed now. We think people have been notified. Now, whether they think we've stated the case correctly, overstated, or understated, I think people have been notified.
Dale Bach now represents dozens of Flint workers suffering from a variety of respiratory problems. They all worked with metalworking fluids, but none of them knew about the Harvard study.
We had a loyalty to our company, and we felt that our company had a loyalty to us as far as providing a safe work environment. And that's the least they should have done.
These aren't the only workers who are sick. There have been outbreaks of hypersensitivity pneumonitis throughout the Midwest. At an auto supply shop in Southfield, 20 cases of HP at a Chrysler plant in Kenosha, Wisconsin, 12 workers at a Ford plant in Connersville, Indiana, and dozens more at 3 GM plants in Michigan. Robert Robinson worked with metal cutting fluids at GM Powertrain in Romulus.
No energy, extreme fatigue. And I had a problem with my joints. It seemed like my joints were on fire.
There has even been an outbreak at the GM plant in St. Catherine, Ontario. One worker almost died before he was diagnosed. Many of the American workers have visited the Occupational Health Clinic in Windsor looking for answers. Jim Brophy says none of them knew about the Harvard study.
It's not the auto industry executives that are at risk from cancer and respiratory disease from this. It's those people that are in those workplaces, and those people have, I think, a moral right to know about what their risks are.
GM claims the exposure levels within its plants are not hazardous, but auto workers are not convinced. The union petitioned OSHA in 1993 to lower the limit and has bargained lower limits on new equipment.
Are the exposure limits for metalworking fluids protecting workers?
Not in my opinion. I've been in some of these plants, and in some plants you can slide along the floor, not because things are spilling, but because there's so much of the metalworking fluid aerosolizing into the air, and then it condenses and drops. And you can go in another company's plant doing the exact same thing, and it's clean. So I know the technology for doing it in a safer manner is out there.
So while the UAW and the auto companies haggle over who is really sick, Barbara struggles to breathe with a medicine cabinet full of steroids. Alvin is getting cancer treatment and hopes he'll make it to the first of the year.
I think somebody in authority is really a sick son of a bitch.
General Motors refused to answer our questions on camera, but issued a statement stating, quote, there is no scientifically reliable evidence that exposure to metalworking fluids within legally permissible levels is hazardous. No one we talked with, including OSHA, would agree. Diana?